Hi, it's Troy. Today I wanted to talk to you about something that I had just barely noticed from the trucker, the red trucker Viking, um, and his channel. One of his videos was entitled "Where's the Seal? Where's the Flag?" And it talks about how he talks about how about mid-March when the national emergency for I'm just going to call it the Cocoa Puff virus, um, because it kind of looks like a Cocoa Puff, doesn't it? Right? When that was declared by President Trump about mid-March, that's when we noticed the national flag, the presidential flag and seal disappeared from the briefing rooms, from his briefs. It started to disappear, and doing my little research on it, trying to look for a picture on it, I've run into actually a lot of YouTube videos and people saying, "Where's the flag? Where's the seal?" So where is the flag? Where's the seal? And as the red Viking trucker points out, when a country's in distress, or a ship or whoever, they fly their flag upside down as a symbol that they're in distress. So, it was kind of disconcerting to him, and yeah, even during other times of national emergency, the national flag and the national seal have always been there. So, I started remembering things that I've studied over the years and had to go back over them, and I've done videos on FEMA and whatnot, and essentially, so what I found, and I've talked about FEMA taking control, and I went to FEMA's website here. You might be able to see that. This is, oh gosh. See, I don't have a workspace. I wish I could do videos where my face was here and I have a chart here. Every time I want to do a video or something, Lisa Haven has beat me to it. So, which is cool. And so usually when I do something, it's because nobody else has done it. There's something I have to add. So this is a video. This is right off of the FEMA.gov website, where it discusses what they would do during a pandemic / influenza, or pandemic influenza continuity of operations. Okay. And FEMA falls under the Office of Homeland Security. Who created the Homeland Security was George Bush Jr., right? But before him, it was actually, I believe Bill Clinton tried to get it through tried to create the Office of Homeland Security after the Mira Federal Building was bombed by passing the Patriot Act, but couldn't. He didn't make it happen. And then you see national directive here under George Bush. There's so many of these. I mean, Obama did a lot of them, but here's where we go back. It talks about the continuity of government. This is the actual text, but you see here you got the FEMA symbol and you got a Homeland Defense and Security. Wait, this wasn't George Bush Sr. then? Yeah. George W. Bush. Okay. It says 1946. The date this was passed was, like, he wrote it in 1946, and then the date was 2007. So George Herbert Walker Bush. And they are following the FEMA plan to the T, where they talk about it's all about the continuity of government and how they would respond to a pandemic. And essentially the government goes away as we know it. It gets pretty detailed. It's only 30 pages though, but it's very confusing. They go through the stages of lockdown. They talk about social distancing. Oh yeah, they have like 8 stages. I can't even get to it. Some of them you can take them out because they're about animals. What to do with animals if the animals are carrying the disease. I've got this thing here, human capital. Although a pandemic influenza outbreak may not directly affect physical infrastructure of an organization, a pandemic will ultimately threaten all operations by its impact on an organization's human resources. So, I mean, there you go. I mean, like every single page is what they're doing. Test and training, devolution and control and direction. It talks about transferring operational control of one or more essential functions to predetermined responsible party or parties. It uses wording that we've been hearing. Essential functions may be necessary to continue full or partial de-evolution of essential functions may be necessary to continue essential functions and services. I won't bore you on all this. This is on FEMA.gov. This is the FEMA plan. I think the reason why, and this is my whole point to this video, why the flag and why the presidential flag and seal are gone is because we are now under a declaration of war, well, which we have been for a long time, but I mean, since they declared this emergency, when the World Health Organization declares a pandemic, that's when FEMA is supposed to get involved. FEMA is under Homeland Security, so that's what it says. That's what it says. Okay, we got the Homeland Security Digital Library. I won't bore you with the details. So we've got FEMA working in conjunction with the Homeland Security and National Security. Here you see where George Bush had signed into law the National Security Presidential Directive 51, or NSPD 51, and Homeland Security Presidential Directive HSPD 20, subject National Continuity Policy. So, as I stated, FEMA is under Homeland Security, and the National Security, it's kind of like in psychology, they'll tell you, like, if you're a girl, your mom tells you, your dad will tell you how to act, and your mom tells you how. No, what is it? Your dad tells you what to do, and your mom tells you how. Or if you're a boy, your mom tells you what to do, and your dad tells you how. Something like that. That's kind of like what these guys are with in conjunction with FEMA. FEMA, I've broken this up where, and it doesn't talk about breaking up the United States into 10 different regions of unelected governors that I can see here. It's not specific on that. That's somewhere else. This is just these are presidential directives, and these are old, so it's kind of like George Bush ran the Homeland. It was his job. No, it was Clinton's job to get the Homeland Security Department up and running, and I guess it didn't really work out. George Herbert Walker Bush, he started with the FEMA plans, and all this goes back to John Birch. I mean, really, maybe even before then, Smedley Butler. So they've been planning this for a long time, and as time has drawn nearer and nearer, we see it actually happening now, where we're to the point where, and then Obama, he did a lot of presidential directives outlining the takeover plan, the transition of the government to the hidden government. Whatever, I can't even believe I'm saying this. The New World Order, as we used to call it. You know, you can call it the deep state or whatever, but there's always been, this plan has been in the making for a long time. So I went on CNN's website here. This talks about, this is an article, Governor Cuomo, this goes back to March, I think March 27th. Cuomo to FEMA, you pick up the 26,000 people who are going to die, because FEMA had essentially taken control. I mean, we're assuming that FEMA really is federal, from the federal government, but they're not. It's an organization created or utilized. Well, actually, I got to this through the World Health Organization. When the World Health Organization declares a pandemic, then FEMA, bam. So I'll tell you what FEMA stands for. It says here, a week after the government's principal emergency response agency, that's took the lead on the growing Cocoa Puff pandemic, I almost said it, officials have been trying to catch up, hoping to streamline communications and sort out distribution to get necessary equipment to states pleading for help. And in the FEMA guidelines, one of the things off of the FEMA's page here, the pandemic. Okay, here's their phases of the outline. World Health Organization pandemic influenza phases. Okay, this is, and note that it is FEMA.gov. They've got their seal on this. So we are dealing with the WHO, and the global government is world, anything with world in it, okay? Just be suspicious. And it talks about what a pandemic, how to describe it, human to human transmission, that's phase 4, of an animal or human animal influenza reassortant virus able to sustain community level outbreaks has been verified. And then they go down to the next page. the WHO phases of pandemic alert. So this is why the entire world, all the other countries seem to be working in tandem, doing the same thing. You can just read anything in phase 2. Let's see. Let's go to phase. Let's just go down some of the more developed phases. Phase 6, the pandemic phase, is characterized by community-level outbreaks in at least one other country in a different World Health Organization region, in addition to criteria defined in phase 5. So they're saying that you don't have to be in a World Health Organization for this to apply to you. Phase 5 designation of this phase will indicate that a global pandemic is underway. During the post-peak period, pandemic disease levels in most countries with adequate surveillance, and that's why I think this is under the Department of Homeland Security, which is basically a huge budget direction office. If you know anything about these, because do you see Homeland Security offices everywhere? Because I visited one at the state capitol, and it's just a little office. It wasn't that big. I mean, it's not like this. You have to surrender your ID to go in. It's just like it was an office. It's part of the state capitol. They didn't have their own offices, like police. The police do, and they utilize officers, and they utilize their state budgets. They direct budgets to police departments and other state agencies to help coordinate this type of a design for controlling the public, essentially. Yeah, it's kind of really what it does. So, they're the ones that get the cops the tasers, okay? They're the ones that, with their money. They're the ones that get them the black outfits, and they're the ones that they're over there a lot of budgets within the state. They're the ones that put out the grants, okay? The post-peak period signifies that pandemic activities appear to be decreasing. However, it is uncertain if additional waves will occur, okay? And countries will need to be prepared for a second wave. Now this is old stuff here. But this is everything that we've been watching in the news. Does any of this wording sound familiar? Because this is an older document. I'm going to see if I can find out when it was written, but I read it years ago. It's got their even see, we got FEMA here. This is the very first page. This is the cover page. FEMA, U.S. Department of Homeland Security. That's what we're looking at. We're not looking at, see, the public will trust a bunch of doctors. That's why they always say doctors recommend this and doctors recommend that. May include death, blindness. What am I trying to find on here? Oh, I'm trying to find the date. Well, okay, the date that this was written. National Security, Presidential Directive. I can't find it, but I know it's been around for a long time. The World Health Organization. Okay. And this is just our government's response to it, but it goes to the other governments as well. This is the Presidential Directive, National Security Directive 51 and Homeland Security Directive 20. I think, I'm guessing they had Presidential Directive, I want to say 50 in first, and the Homeland Security Directive came second, but I can't prove that. With more research, you can find this stuff out, but I think I just proved that FEMA is, in fact, FEMA's in charge right now. So that might be why you're not seeing the presidential flag being flown, because if you read their document, both the documents, the presidential directives, just the presidential directives that I've outlined are just some of the first, some of the ones that are more notable, but there's many more. Obama did a lot. Okay, so it was his job to kind of marry the two here, FEMA with the government and the World Health Organization, and turn this into, kind of marry us with the New World Order through presidential directives. And it looked like George Bush Jr.'s job was getting Homeland Security on the scene. What else was I going to say? And his father, I mean, he pushed the FEMA agenda, obviously. This was signed by George Walker Bush. There's no way that he wrote this. Okay, I'm going to go back to the March 27th CNN article here, where it says the FEMA Emergency Management Agency, which falls under the Department of Homeland Security, is deploying its extensive experience in disaster response to coordinate the federal response. See? Right here. To coordinate the federal response. In doing so, the agency has come under mounting pressure to create an organized and efficient process and get states and hospitals the medical supplies they need internally. That's also led to confusion and irritation as FEMA tries to take the leading position. And they have. So, essentially what we've seen is a suspension of the Constitution and Bill of Rights in place of a national emergency when FEMA declared the pandemic, the World Health Organization declared the pandemic, Homeland Security kicks in FEMA, and they just, I think they're a go-between between FEMA and the national security and the military. Everything you read on these, this is all speak. These directives, Presidential Directive, National Security Presidential Directive 51, Homeland Security Presidential Directive 20, the World Health Organization's FEMA outline for FEMA. Okay, how does FEMA fall under the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and the World Health Organization? But it is on FEMA.gov. I think that they wrote this for the United States because it gives the address right here, Washington, D.C. 20472. So this is our response to the World Health Organization, to FEMA. And I think this is actually a template that you can put different names on it. It's got our flag on it. No, that's not our flag, is it? Anyway, the only flag they have is the one with gold fringe on the outside of it, the American flag, which actually symbolizes law of the sea. I can't remember. I'd have to make this a really long video, but when you're at sea, you fly the flag of the country who you represent, but that doesn't mean it's like, I think we're talking about admiralty law. It's different at sea. You're not in the country anymore, but you try to represent yourself according to your country's laws and traditions, but you still have a captain, and he is over everybody. You don't have a Congress on your ship. So that's what the gold fringe means. It means that we're not under the Constitution, that they're not representing the Constitution. They're representing admiralty law, dictatorship. You can look this stuff up. It goes way back, way back. Anyway, so that's why you might not be seeing the presidential flag or seal in any of Donald Trump's briefings since the declaration of emergency. In any of his briefings, it's gone. And I think that he's a smart guy. I like Trump. I think his job, I've talked about the jobs of the other presidents, I think his job is to declare the bankruptcy. And I think that he's in over his head, kind of. He's a real smart guy, but there's just not enough of, let's just say there's just not enough Trump. There's not as many Trumps to stop this thing. It's been going on in the background, and now they have their excuse. Mind you, that the economy was already slipping away before the pandemic, or the state of emergency was called upon. It would have had to have been called upon very soon this year. I was watching, before I knew about the Cocoa Puff sickness, because I watch the bond market, I watch ETFs, I watch gold and silver, a little bit of the cryptocurrencies, and I'm watching global collapses. I was watching them occur, and I saw the repo rate. Again, to explain that is what that is, you just have to look it up. It's the rate at which banks lend to each other overnight when they don't have enough cash on hand for the deposits that are required. And the Federal Reserve is usually who they go to last, because the Federal Reserve essentially, it's not a bank, but they create the money for the bank, so they prefer not to go to them. I think interest rates are higher, and it really screws things up, but the repo rate went up 10% overnight, which was really close to a default on banks. So I think I figured out the problem that I was discussing about the famine is, with this globalized world, farmers in every part of the world have been growing and selling their crop through third-party cutouts to other parts of the world. And with this pandemic, a lot of imports and exports are either shut off completely, or they're just tightly controlled. So what you might be growing, and you're selling it to whoever, you're growing soybeans and China's supposed to buy it. Now they're not gonna, they may or they may not buy it. President said just yesterday, I think, we don't know how that's going to happen, but we'll see. We're very optimistic about it, you know. I just stopped watching his briefings, but yeah, I still believe in him. I just wish we had more time. And now I am coming to the point where I am actually starting to believe all the stuff that I've already known as it comes to light. And you go like this to see, and you can see a little bit. You know, I'm being able to see, and so this thing's not going away. If what I'm reading is correct, this continuity of government, remember, it goes away quick. It's quick to go away. It's slow to come back. The government as we now know it is gone. And can't even find out where they're talking about that. I mean, I'm just looking for any kind of quote here. This stuff's all talking points in the news. So, very strange, getting you used to it. So, I think by September we're going to actually see problems with food distribution. Um, we're going to see more lockdowns. We're going to see roadblocks. Remember, you know how fast this all happened? Well, it's no surprise looking at this. It was already happening. It already happened. The economy would have collapsed. Now they have something to blame it on. You know, if they reopened up the economy and businesses started up again, and then if we were back to where we were, we would be close to where we are, but only on a different level. It's just now, see, FEMA is also was created to for population, you know, if there was it's for disaster, you know, and it includes the disasters, and it does include civil unrest for one reason or another. I just can't find it. I'm going between all the different national security orders I have here. Uh, I mean, I'm looking at 30 pages of just of FEMA's pandemic plans here. The strategy for implementation and assumption. I mean, maybe I should just read the table of contents. That's pretty long. You can read it yourself. This is getting to be a long video. Anyway, look it up. Tables and figures, World Health Organization, pandemic influenza phases, page 12. World Health Organization, pandemic influenza phases, page 14. Huh. Oh, there's a table in Table 1 is on page 12. Figure 1 is on page 14. Okay. Well, you got to read this stuff to believe it. And the funny thing is, you should read it, I think you'll get a kick out of reading these PDF files, these presidential directives. And I just read the ones from George H. Bush. But go check out the FEMA one first, okay? FEMA.gov, their plan. Go check that out first, and tell me that you're not hearing everything that you read. You're not hearing word for word. Most of this, word for word, in the news, in different stories. Till next time, it's Troy. Peace out.